there were at least 2 hurricanes during that war. And of course, during that time, we followed the traditions of entering the caves because we knew how to tell when these things were coming based on natural signs. We still
unfortunately, I've misjudged the amount of time that we have. I apologize for interrupting that, but I'm sure we'll hear much more in future conversations. This is Lead Story. I'm appreciative to Chief Richard Curry, leader of the Acapon Maroons of St. Elizabeth, and Alex Moore-Minot of the Moortown Maroons for having joined us to look at their handling of Hurricane Melissa. Good evening, I'm Joel Crossgill. Stand by for news.
Need to estimate your duty? Perform a track and trace? Search for a declaration?
Then download the Jamaica Customs mobile app today. The time by the Jamaica Customs Agency is
12 p.m.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Thanks for joining us for CVM News at Noon. It's Friday, November 14. I'm Amoy Harriet. Up first this afternoon, the identities of 2 policemen killed along Waltham Park Road on Thursday have been released. Reports are that the officers Charles Stewart and Jamari Gordon were fatally shot during an altercation with a group of men along a section of Waltham Park Road. Police say the cops were in conversation with 20-year-old Junior Brown, an unemployed resident, along with 20-year-old Macarius Monroe and Cardell Insang, when an argument developed. It's alleged that Monroe pulled a firearm and opened fire, hitting both officers multiple times. The officers were rushed to hospital where they succumbed to their injuries. Now, after the shooting, the 3 men believed to be members of the Dusty Gang escaped on foot. We'll have more details in this story in CVM News at 7. Now, water has been restored to 76% of National Water Commission customers island-wide. That's according to Minister of Water Matthew Samuda, who says the cost of the relief and restoration plans of the NWC will exceed 10 billion Jamaican dollars.
We expect, with our work with JPS, and indeed now as we continue to bring systems on, as we start to shuffle generators, we expect over the next 3 days to get to 85% of our customer base.
Meanwhile, Works Minister Robert Morgan, in his update on the restoration of roads and drainage infrastructure, noted that the cost of the preparations done prior to Hurricane Melissa was roughly $400 million. However, the cost of restoration is set to amount to about $35 billion, making the $5 billion that Cabinet already assigned seem like a drop in the bucket. Crystal Williams reports.
Based on information gathered by the National Works Agency, the Minister with responsibility for Works, Robert Morgan, says 396 roads were impacted by Hurricane Melissa, but 85 of them were able to be cleared within 5 days. Minister Morgan says that this time last week, 61 blocked roads were reported, and that since then, that amount has been cut by 50%. One challenge, he says, he has been facing is the return of debris after road work has been done.
And the issue with the disaster is that sometimes you clear a road and it becomes blocked again, as was the case in sections of St. James over the last 48 hours, where we did clear a lot of the roads in St. James, such as Adelphi, but because of heavy rains, those roads became blocked again and we had to reopen. We have 123 roads that are 2 lanes and 248 that are single lanes. And as time goes by, you will see the number of block roads being reduced.
The ministry also reported that roads surrounding the Holland Bamboo area in particular have been challenging to clear. However, he says the curfew that has been imposed has given them an opportunity to do a better job.
Bamboo is one of the more difficult type of vegetation to clear, especially when it is crushed, because it intertwines itself and it requires a lot of sawmen, a lot of cutlass men. We were able to create a corridor for people to move through, but there's still some bamboo sticking out. So we're not able to put heavy equipment there while a large portion of persons were trying to traverse to bring aid to their families and aid convoys were going through. So now that we have a curfew, we will have an opportunity to put some heavy equipment in that area.
He also reported the destruction of fording in areas such as North Clarendon. He provided an assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of the road clearing agenda, as well as strategies and a budget for future plans.
Well, Cabinet has decided that preliminarily we will be spending $5 billion through the National Works Agency, while we are going to be spending $5 billion. The cost preliminarily that we have seen in terms of damage to our road infrastructure is about $35 billion. But we have not yet completed our assessments, so we expect that that figure will increase over time.
Crystal Williams reporting for CVM News.
The Louisville Hurricane Shelter in St. Elizabeth is not only providing a refuge for hurricane-hit families, but also serving as a community hub, with relief supplies flowing in and residents gathering daily for Wi-Fi, recharging and care packages. Once housing 20, now down to 13, the shelter continues to provide comfort and care as government relief reaches families still recovering from Hurricane Melissa. More details from Crystal Williams.
Manager for the primary shelter for the Louisville New Market area in St. Elizabeth says currently 13 persons are at the shelter, a reduction from 20 prior to the storm. He says he has seen proof that help from the private sector and the government has been coming in steadily.
Up to yesterday, we get some drinking water for our persons in the shelter. So far, things are flowing pretty well. I think that the relief is going on well.
He says while they are trying to cope with their respective situations, they are in specific need of drinking water as part of broader sanitation assistance.
I have to be using my personal sanitary thing to help with the shelteree that are here, and also directing them of what to do. Bleach, some disinfectant, and those things to use to help to prepare the bathroom for proper use.
The shelter is one of the few buildings equipped with a Starlink internet connection. Members of the community gather to connect with their loved ones, charge their devices, and receive care packages. As most of the Louisville High School has been damaged, they are using the parts that have been spared to prepare children in the community for the remainder of the school year.
Well, that's another big problem, because for this one, probably 3/4 of it, as you see, has been destroyed. And we are using what we call the deck part to see if we can prepare for school, because the other part won't be able to be used immediately. So we are trying to use the other part to prepare, especially for those who are going to do their CSEC exam. And that is what we are doing.
Crystal Williams reporting for CVM News.
Now, the government says it's headed back to the drawing board to review building standards for Jamaica's schools. This after more than 600 schools island-wide suffered millions of dollars in damage from Hurricane Melissa. Now, alarmingly, several of the affected schools had only recently been reconstructed after suffering similar damage from Hurricane Beryl last year.
What made me quite unhappy was the fact that last year after Hurricane Beryl, some of those very schools were repaired. And 1 year later, we're back at repairing them.
Education Minister Dr. Dana Morris-Dixon at a special press briefing by government Thursday morning.
That raises questions for me about the quality of work that would have been done. And it also raises other questions about standards and the standards of our schools. And so I've asked some of our multilateral partners to work with us to look at the building standards around schools, because it's not acceptable that you have a hurricane 1 year and you fix it, and then the next year you're back at it again.
Some 364 schools were impacted by Hurricane Barry last year. That's just about half the total number of schools affected by Melissa. The minister noted that the aim this time around is to rebuild schools that are more climate resilient.
There are many schools that have done a tremendous job. You know, they're trying to help themselves, and they'll add a classroom here and a classroom there, or they'll do some work on a new hall or something like that. And in many instances, as I've gone around, a lot of those have been destroyed. And so as we move forward, we're going to have to ensure that even where schools are doing their own fundraising and building structures, that they are built within particular standards.
In the meantime, Minister Morris-Dixon has announced that the government will be offering cleanup grants to all schools in Western Jamaica that were affected by the hurricane.
The grants will be from $300,000 to $1 million, depending on how much cleanup they're doing. And so those will start going out to the schools starting tomorrow.
Now, Scotia Group Jamaica has donated approximately $18 million to Food for the Poor Jamaica to support the organization's ongoing relief and recovery efforts in the wake of Hurricane Melissa. The funds will help provide essential food, care packages, and other support to families across the island whose livelihoods and homes were severely affected by the storm. Now, the contribution forms a part of Scotia Group's initial $165 million National Hurricane Relief Recovery and Resilience allocation announced last week. In addition to financial support, more than 60 Scotia volunteers joined Food for the Poor's relief efforts on Monday to pack over 2,000 food packages. Now, each package provides enough items to make meals to sustain a family of 4 for a week and a half. Volunteers have also pledged continued assistance in the weeks ahead as recovery efforts expand.
As a long-standing partner of the United Way, the Scotia Foundation is proud to support the launch of the Restoration and Rehabilitation Fund, which will provide vital assistance to the agriculture sector, from grants to farmers to support for schools and families, helping communities recover and rebuild their livelihoods in the immediate and long term. Recently, Scotiabank announced an initial allocation of approximately 165 million Jamaican dollars to support national hurricane relief, recovery, and resilience efforts. These funds will be channeled through trusted partners who are working to restore livelihoods and rebuild communities across the island. The allocations are still being finalized as we work to ensure that each contribution is directed where it can make the greatest impact.
Our Chief Justice Brian Sykes says Jamaica has achieved unprecedented gains in court efficiency and backlog reduction as the country prepares to showcase its judicial reforms at the International Association for Court Administration IACA conference in Dubai on November 13. The IACA, a global network focused on strengthening court administration, has included Jamaica as a member for the past 6 years. Now, during that time, the judiciary has shared best practices with international partners and adopted strategies from other jurisdictions. Jamaica's participation highlights its growing reputation as a regional leader in court modernization, performance, management, and accountability, and its ongoing push to improve access to justice.
The Court of Appeal has improved its output and is gradually reducing its backlog. The parish courts are backlog free, and the Supreme Court, while not where we need it to be, has increased its productivity and output. And particularly this year, or continuing from last year into this year, the traffic court has made immeasurable progress. very, very significant progress over time, and by next year the expectation is that the traffic court will be backlog free. Why is that important? It is a high volume court and traffic courts generally do not accomplish this. The other session that we'll be participating in is how to secure funding for judicial operations, designing policy conversations that secure a yes. Why is that also a significant presentation for us? It is introducing to my colleagues and court administrators a different way of having the conversation with ministries of finance. Very often the judiciary will say we are not being properly funded, and that may very well be true. But having said that, how do you have the conversation in a manner that makes the executive receptive to the arguments and to provide the resources that we need? And what that really means is that we need to have a strategic plan and a realistic plan, and you demonstrate to the executive how you intend to accomplish the goals. And what the executive oftentimes is interested in, the performance of the courts. That usually means reduced backlog, the cases going through faster, and ease of communication with the courts.
Time now for a break. Stay with us. More when we come back.
Carpet Store. We bring comfort to every step with flooring that blends softness and style. From carpets and rugs to durable vinyl flooring and expert installation services, we have everything you need to transform your space. And when it's time for a refresh, our carpet and upholstery cleaning service brings your flooring back to life. Visit us at 18 Dunbarton Avenue, Kingston. The Carpet Store, because you deserve the best.
Tired of the high interest rates and the whole heap of loan payments every month? Take a debt consolidation loan from AIM to pay credit card bills and all other high interest rate loans from other institutions. Make one low monthly payment to AIM and take home some extra money in your pocket. That's financial freedom. One loan, one low payment, more money in your pocket. Call AIM today to lower your loan payment. And remember, you won't find a better deal elsewhere.
Welcome back to CVM News at noon. Now, the Transport Authority is reporting early success from Operation Reset, a targeted initiative launched on Monday to clamp down on the overcharging of fares by public passenger vehicle operators. In just 3 days, the operation resulted in 52 prosecutions for fare overcharging and 32 motor vehicle seizures. Now, Managing Director of the Transport Authority, Ralston Smith, says the agency will now intensify its efforts island-wide to stamp out what he describes as an unacceptable and illegal practice. And we're joined now by Mr. Smith to discuss the progress of Operation Reset. Good afternoon, Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
To begin, what prompted the launch of Operation Reset at this time?
Well, right across the country, the entire population was crying out rather loudly about the unsavory practice of some PPV operators overcharging. You'd have heard our minister as well, the Honorable Darrell Vaz, in one of his presentation at Jamaica House, bringing the matter to light and asking the operators to desist from the practice, and of course the Transport Authority and the police to treat with the matter. And so the Transport Authority set about understanding what the issues were, and so we started out with what we call some route mapping and intelligence gathering on a number of routes, both in Kingston and the rural parishes. We conducted a number of sensitization operations in the space. We disseminated flyers and information to both operators and the commuters, advising, indicating, sensitizing exactly what the fare structures are for the respective areas. And then phase 3 of that, we started our detection and apprehension program. And in that, the Transport Authority's Operations Department, or route inspectors, they set about intervening in the field in terms of executing operators for the practice. We did a number of covert operations, and that is to say we would have gone undercover, baiting the vehicles, taking them as agent provocateurs, and extracting for ourselves the tangible evidence that is required to bring about a successful prosecution in the court of law. We also have the conversation with the commuters, and we, gather the evidence, and we would have used the evidence thereafter to conduct some of the prosecutions. In respect of the seizures, all those operators would be operating against the terms of the license. The authority thought it necessary to exercise its power, particularly at this critical juncture when the country is ravaged by the passage of Hurricane Melissa, and reeling from the aftermath of it. People are generally suffering, and therefore find it to be, inhumane at this time for the operators to raise a fare. We understand in some areas that roads are impassable, and in those areas, operators may have to take alternate route. The fare structure is flexible insofar as it allows for the